when I got out of college, I had originally thought I wanted to work directly with people, specifically in foster care kids. And I did that for about a year and a half, and I burnt out so quickly because I now realize in my life, I say that empathy is my superpower, but also my kryptonite. And so I think being too close to, I just went home crying a lot and I wanted to adopt every kid. And I felt like there were so many problems with the system level that I needed to go more macro. So definitely did that pause as well
Got it.
before it really.
There's a couple things I want to unpack in there because there was a lot.
Mm.
I like
Talking
that.
fast.
No, you're doing great. And I finally got the recording started. So now we
Oh,
finally,
yay.
in the background, I was Googling, what are all the potential problems? So I want to hone in on a second. What made you, was the sort of health class on a whim? Like you had an inkling that maybe health was going to be the way you want to take this psychology, right? Because that isn't necessarily, not every person who's doing Soshanth goes, yeah, let's take like health psychology as a thing. Do you remember sort of what triggered you that made you go, oh, that might be the thing?
Um, I loved the I, I loved, yeah, I loved the focus on, I think stress is very interesting to me. And because I think it's something that, all of us are, it impacts everyone. It's kind of a universal, like everyone gets stressed, but the degree to which people do, and therefore like the impacts on people. I was just really fascinated. And on another note, I heard that the teacher was the hardest teacher. And I very quickly got bored in college. Like I didn't see the challenge. I went on to a triple major. I was just the kid that lived in the library and wanted to soak up everything. And I was like very easily getting a 4.0 and people were like, she is hard. And like I was really looking for like also a challenge. And she gave that to me. So I think there were a couple pieces in there. It's like was a really fascinating area where I felt I could, get closer to the healthcare realm as well.
Got it. And so, you also talked about, sort of post-college, right? Starting to do some things that went, okay, man, I'm going to burn out real quick if I go this direction. Because you did sort of go off, this is the Northeastern Family Institute, right? You go off sort of in this behavioral health
Mm.
journey. And it sounded to me, what I feel like I heard was, hey, it's not that I didn't love it. It's just maybe I recognized it wasn't going to be something sustainable for me from a sort of personal health perspective. What was that
Yeah.
like?
Yeah. It was so interesting because I think I gravitated towards that, like again, my own childhood. There was something almost triggering about it to me to like see these kids that to some degree had similar experiences. It made me though, like I think, my boss there said like my ability to like become a kid with them and like their lives were so serious and I'm someone who had such a serious childhood that now I am goofy as all hell. I hope we can say that on here. I know you don't mind cursing. I've read your book. So, yeah, like I'm just a goofy. I just, and I think that the fact that because as a case manager, you can kind of be really serious and these kids just almost need to learn to be able to be a kid again. Like they're dealing with such serious things and so I think like I would pick up on like what were things that they were slightly interested in that I knew they maybe weren't having nurtured at home. One of them was like, he liked to take pictures. So like I also kind of probably did things you weren't like I went and got him a camera and like, it was always like a kind of like this is like the gray area of maybe where you need to stop and stuff like but I just I could it was easy for me to see areas that they where they kind of needed help. There was that relation piece. And so then it was really hard to just like, okay, it's like they're now maybe switching out of the program, or I know that at the end of the day, they're just going back to this like broken family. And I really struggled with that. I was like, I can't do it. I can't cry every day. or adopt 8 children at like my 20s. It's like, I'm just taking them all home. It's fine.
My partner works with kids, and every day she comes home to me and she's like, I want to adopt this one. I'm like, they have parents, man. You can't just take all the kids. We can't steal all the children. But so you quickly realize, like, okay, maybe sort of direct mental health care is going to be a burnout space for you, one where you don't have the right boundaries. And I think that's a really self-aware thing to know at such a young age, and it's so awesome and impressive. How does that get you to the MPH? Like, how does that get you to the next step, right? As you go back to BU and a sort of like start this next journey.
Yeah. Well, I took like 2 years in between and did some bartending. So I lived all over, and I lived in Nashville for a while, and did like, I knew I wanted to go back to school. I just didn't know for what. And I saw so many of my friends that had gone right from undergrad to grad school, and then turned out like they didn't have any of that life experience that I think then like could change what you actually want to do. Like, I went and experienced some of it, and then was very like, oh my God, no. And like, I could have gone right to, a clinical program, and then found out after all that I couldn't handle it. So I feel like the experience side of it um was, super super important to me. But so I took time, and wasn't awful, because I became very much a people person. And I think some of that also, like, just dealing with bartending and all the different humans that come in, it helps my people skills. So I like to see it as a good time still. And then I had connected back with like some mentors and things like that. They've always been really helpful to me, to seek them out. And they had said, what about public health? And public health hadn't been an undergrad major when I was looking, and now I feel like it is, which is great. So I started looking into public health programs. I was like, I want to go somewhere that's going to be so hard. So I was like interviewing like at Harvard and Yale and Brown, and I was like, man, y'all are like too serious. And like, especially for something that's like, we got to help people. Nothing against anyone who went there. But I just like, some of it felt a little cutthroat-y, and I was like, oh, this isn't the right fit. And then I remember sitting in a class, because I wanted to take classes. I just wanted to like feel what it was like and interact with students. And then I sat in a class at BU, and the focus was just so much on the people, and like doing activities out in the community. And Boston University, their public health and school is right connected to Boston Medical, which is very much a safety net hospital. There's clinics all around, homeless shelters, like you are in it. And I really wanted that. Like, I didn't it was like, this isn't the right time to be in the ivory tower. Like, if I want to help people, like, I need to be here. So I made the switch, and what was great about it is that it wasn't a program that was based heavily on like one or the other. You really got to choose your discipline. Like, they had biostats, epidemiology, things like that, more some of the research stuff. And then, but they had behavioral science. And so social and behavioral sciences that I ended up doing as my degree there, and
And
loved.
so let's talk about, I mean, again, lots to unpack there. I love that you took some time off before school. I think that's, people come to me all the time and are like, should I go directly to the
Mhm.
Penn program? And I'm like, no, just go do something else and figure out if you
Yeah.
want to come back to this thing. Right. Because I think a lot of folks do rush into things. And I hear you I certainly hear the competitive aspect of traditional academia can be a real turnoff, I think, for some people, right? I ended up at Cornell, but had originally declined them. And the reason that I declined them for my PhD was feeling exactly that. It felt like, there's competition for lab space, competition for everything. And even like going to a party felt weirdly competitive. And I was like, I just don't, this is not an atmosphere that resonates with me. And I do think a lot about how that may turn off a whole group of people from higher education that might be really valuable. Um, did you when you came into the MPH, were you like, yeah, that behavioral science thing, like this is the thing that maps onto my sociance stuff? Or how did you sort of come to the behavioral sciences in the MPH program?
Yeah. So what was so interesting about it is, and even still seeing it now, is I still don't think they've gotten to behavioral science like I know behavioral science now. Um, it was, I mean, it wasn't, it was very much like learning health belief model and stages of change. And so all very, very good, but not really any touch on, I feel like, behavioral economics and like, and just like more things that I've like more newer frameworks. It was very much like, here's, what's been applied in public health and not really like, is this potentially right? And one of my favorite classes was a teacher that actually talked about the dynamics of like the like historical type of models that a lot of times public health use versus models that come that like advertising companies use, and like the addictive or like persuasive nature, and how do we bring some of that to healthcare. And so that was like a clicking moment for me. Like those guys are, you can see like we were looking at cigarette company ads and things like that, and how, they were understanding humans and like what are they actually looking for when they take that cigarette, or, what does it say about them and things like that. And so I feel like unpacking some of that, I was like, okay, well, like I can be a good guy in this space when it comes to healthcare and being persuasive.
I love that, right? Sort of study thy enemy.
Mhm.
If we live if we live in an obesogenic environment, right? If we live in an environment that encourages smoking, like what have they done so successfully that we are not able to do on the sort of health promotion side?
Yeah.
And I think people sometimes get sort of intellectually lazy with that, where they're like, well, all their things are fun and all our things are not fun. And I'm like, that's not true.
Hmm.
Like games are, playing physical sports is extremely fun. It's been, in human civilization forever. I don't think we could just say, well, their things are fun and our things are not fun, right? Uh, that I think is really reductive. So I love that you sort of that was a triggering moment for you. So you get through the MPH, right? We know we've sort of eliminated clinical care. We know that that's not going to be a space where
Mhm.
Eden is going to find like her sort of, you know, healthy balance. We've
Mhm.
gone through the MPH. We've seen the structural things. We're starting to learn, hey, what can we pull from the other side? And then, this is where you go off into Eliza, like HMS, right?
Yeah, so when I was still in my grad program, I worked at Healthcare for All, which is like a nonprofit in Boston that's all about helping consumers with their healthcare. And like to me, it was just like I'm this kid that's been on my parents' healthcare maybe, and I just maybe had to switch off, and I was going through the like, what do I do now? And like they have this, like we had this call center, it would help people. And I just went and sit with one of them and they helped me figure out my healthcare. But just this idea that there was so much friction in healthcare to even do the thing, like was so interesting to me. And this nonprofit existed just to help people understand their healthcare and get people who are uninsured insured, and like going out into the community and meeting with people and seeing their barriers to care and access. And so I got to kind of be like boots on the ground and like see what was going on in Boston, and and it was just like, whoa, like this needs work. Like, again, it was, we're always like coming back to like system problems, but, obviously we could have a whole chat on the issues of US healthcare, but it was to me, it just was like an opportunity, like even looking at the things they were doing, like I was like, we can simplify these, we can update these letters, we can, you know what I mean? Some of the things that you're saying might actually like some of it was kind of a shame and I was like, you can't shame people. Like, so there were parts that I was starting to like from what I learned, be able to adapt there. And then I had, because of a teacher at BU who had told me about Eliza, because I would have probably never came across it. I had taken a month off to travel in Europe because I was like, you know what? when are you going to get to do this? No job. Everyone was very confused. Just finished my program. Then I got heavy into applying. And as soon as I got back, there was a health engagement designer opening at Eliza, and met with them, just immediately dove in. And so originally it was very content strategy position. So just working with health plans, delivering, IVR scripts, some SMS. It was back in the day when IVR was heavy, and, emails and things. And people were very skeptical about sending people any like SMS or emails. But, I was really in that space. And then from there, it was when I really started learning more about behavioral science, taking courses online, and was like, oh, we need to really do this more here. And so I think what I lacked from my grad school was a little more of the applied behavioral science. I was like, oh, I kind of know this is a thing, but the actual like steps to apply it and like an actual framework that was more of the, like not a health belief model. Those are things I started like uncovering while I was at Eliza.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know this, but I was the Chief Behavioral Officer at Clover, and we used Eliza.
I know.
And
I was like on a call with you. I
I
didn't
know.
know if you ever remember that.
I
We
I
met today.
many years ago. And we like broke the IVR because we wanted to do all sorts of behavioral science things in the IVR, and they were like, you can't really do that, man. That's not what this is really set up to do. It's more like a survey. I'm like, but intervention,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
We will intervene in the thing, and so you were there for about 2 years, right?
I was
And then
well, Eliza got acquired.
by HMS,
So
right? And
yeah,
how did
yeah.
that? So we got to chat with Amy Bucher, who also went through acquisition.
Mm, mm.
How was that process for you? Like, what did that feel like? Did you feel like, you're starting to wake up to like, hey, I want to do more experimentary stuff. I want to intervene more than sort of survey. Did HMS unlock opportunities for that? Or it felt like, tell me a little bit about your time there.
Yeah. So I feel like it was during my HMS time that I actually carved out more of like a behavioral science. Like, I think I maybe had ended there as like a lead behavioral science or behavioral strategist. I don't remember. I was making things up because it didn't exist. But I was like, this is important. And I think in some ways they did. It wasn't that acquisition as much as the next that I was like, oh no, like we gotta go. And I had been able to, what I liked with HMS is they did allow for like continued learning. And so, I took the Irrational Labs Health Boot Camp. I, took one of the Rory Sutherland's behavioral science courses, and different things like that. So I was able to keep learning. And then I had created at both companies I've been at now, well, Impulse and there I created this like design lab innovation space that I felt like was kind of needed. And so for there, we were all health engagement designers. I thought it was funny. I made Headstorm, and it was really a space where I was able to teach others. We would like really hone in on a thing and say, oh, look at what they're doing over here, mostly drawing from other industries for inspiration. Let's have a session to identify how we can plug it in to healthcare. Is there a way? And so we actually had pulled from some of what MadPow was doing, and some of their design sessions that were really all about like that divergent, convergent thinking, having the different rounds. So people that normally wouldn't talk had opportunities, and just amazing ideas were coming out of that. So I think while I was at HMS, I got like kind of the notice of, got on the radar of like our CEO and stuff. And so that helped me to start kind of bridging that there. And then we got acquired again. And it was like by a more heavily like data analytics kind of company that was kind of buying us for our data analytics and not for the rest. So it was kind of like, okay, I think this is going to kind of get chopped out a bit, and not seen as important as like our current C-suite kind of left. And that's when I was like, I've had enough change. It's good.
Yeah, that's understandable, right? I mean, even Eliza, managing to carve out some of that more experimentory space is an accomplishment, right? And then feeling like, hey, executive interest in this thing has waned a little bit is always sort of, we talk a lot in BeSci about these, applied BeSci about these sort of boom and bust cycles where, if you lose your executive sponsor and it you get acquired or something changes where they shift the focus of the business, it can really make what you're doing quite difficult. Why then Impulse, right? So I could see the relationship, right? Eliza and Impulse, both, there's some mobile components in here. There's some sort of talking to people components in there. Like when you looked around the market, were there other people that were sort of in the running? Did Impulse sort of feel like the natural next step? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it was interesting how that happened. It was actually two of my folks that had left Eliza. They had done different things, and then both of them ended up at Impulse. I didn't really know that at the time, but their head of engagement strategy and the CEO found me on LinkedIn and reached out to me about a job opportunity. So it was like the same time that I was like, well, I'm thinking about it. And it's so hard, I think, like switching from your first job. I think I was very risk averse back then and like, oh my God, but I got one and like I'm done doing the things. And so I think I kind of almost needed that approach type of way to give me the comfort I needed to get out of there and feel like I was going to be a bit safe. And so they had reached out to me about engagement strategy. And when I had been looking, I was really interested just because of what was happening in healthcare, TCPA changes, things like that, regulatory changes that were allowing plans to actually text their members. It wasn't something that Eliza had at the time, technology to support. They were a very heavy IVR platform. And so to do actually like the idea of Impulse doing conversations with members using their natural language processing and AI and pieces like that, I was like, this is like, I can do different things, like same space, but learn like different skills and new challenges. So for me, that was the thing.
And if it wasn't, was there anything else like a sort of, I know you at various times have gone off to Europe and done other things. Like, was there something else in the mind that we were like, hey, if it's not this, it might be something else? Or you were like, no, this feels like it's a very gradual transition and it just sort of feels like it's sort of happening.
Yeah, well, I really like believe in like people and like clicking and my boss there, the person that reached out to me that I first met with, Paul Feiner, and he, oh man, he is just like, he is what I needed. I think that I struggled a little with, I was making sure no one on here would be on from my previous company. I didn't have like the greatest sort of boss situation at that company, and I didn't feel encouraged and like I really like needed that. And I think, I was suffering imposter syndrome and all the things that we come across, and felt like some of the time my ideas were kind of being taken and not getting credit and things like that.
Wait,
And
sorry. Are you suggesting that women in the workplace's ideas might occasionally get co-opted by men? I don't think that
all
would
the time.
ever happen. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
And I was just so happy that it was getting heard, that I was kind of okay with it. I was like, this is just life. And when I met Paul, it was just like he was just like, you are like brilliant and like need to be like, I don't know. It was just he like raised me up in such a way, and his kind of he says it to me now. We're very close. He's a mentor now, since he's left Impulse. And he just is like, he always says, like, I try to surround myself with people that are smarter than me, to be a good manager. And I loved that, like that he wasn't threatened by me bringing a new type of thing that he didn't really know about, but he knew was important. And so that was like, yeah, I think not only like the skills and the different type of things that I'd be working on, but I think I saw value in that relationship, that it would help me get over some of the things that I, was struggling with.
I love that. And I love that you said in particular the sort of, I don't know, I don't know enough about it, but I know it's important, right? And that desire to sort of take on things that I don't know enough about it, but I think it's important, which is something every behavioral scientist will have, right? Even if you have a great executive sponsor who sort of gets it or knows it, you're going to have to. So as you transitioned into Impulse, sort of as their sort of first behavioral hire,
Mhm.
how did you help them understand how to use you and engage with you? And how did you, I often think about, the sort of hose analogy of, right, like I need both sides to be ready in order to make that connection. How did you help them sort of structure their side to be ready to take you on?
Yeah. So I feel like because I had like I feel like always like it's great to go in originally and I'm very much in like observation mode and like, okay, what's going on here? What are like things I can see as like areas that I can quickly improve upon or bring my experience to. But like sitting back for a minute to just, obviously soak it all in, but really from that, like, okay, what are some pain points? What are some barriers that are already doing the diagnosis of the team? And um, I felt like one of the biggest things was like a collaboration space. People were very siloed on what they were working on, and there wasn't any of that like help or, it was like heads down and it was just all these really smart people that weren't ever kind of discussing what they were working on. There was a lot of like recreating the wheel, starting from scratch on things, and just like an opportunity to like, how do we start housing and creating, more of like a solution concept, which is what I've been working on the past few years is like, we're always working on these same problems because it's healthcare, it's HEDIS measures. How do we, create and then iterate and improve on a thing versus starting from scratch. And so I started there. Improv for Impulse was my version of the design studio again. And it was where I, in the beginning, like probably month 2, I started that. And every week I was teaching on a different, I was started with behavioral science 101. And then I kind of did like, breaking down different like here we're going to talk about social proof or endowment effect. And I was pulling like, here's what's going on, what it is, here's how it's been applied in other industries, here's examples of how it's been applied in healthcare. And so I'd have those sessions and did a lot of teaching and got the team to a place where we were all like having that shared language. And so much so that I was very quickly I won an award that first year from my company at our holiday party that was like, for like something innovative. I forget the exact thing, but I was so in shock and was like, oh my God, award. But it was like, our team had won it really for this improv studio. And because of that, was able to get the actual more of a behavioral science title because people were starting to see the value of it. And I also thought from like an optics and framing that, we were saying we were doing it. So we should really kind of carve out like the people that are doing it. Yeah, all the
I love
things.
I love that because I do think so much of bringing a discipline into some places, not only doing the work but teaching others to do the work. When you weren't teaching, right? So you're teaching on Fridays. Like, what's the work for you as you come in? Like, on your day-to-day basis, what are you doing as you get that team up to speed? Because I think that's one of the things that I've heard often from people is sort of how to strike that balance between sort of teaching everybody else to do stuff while also making enough progress that people are
Yeah.
feeling that.
Yeah. Well, what was interesting is the team that I had come into, I had such experience in the space, and I feel like some of the team maybe didn't have the healthcare side, or, it felt pretty new to me still that they were learning, and the team that had come over wasn't a team that really knew healthcare. They were from the Big No, which was like a kind of a health education platform, which was really cool, but they didn't really know healthcare from like a regulatory perspective. And so when
Mhm.
someone would come to them or a client would ask them, what are you doing for CCS or BCS? They'd be like, what the heck are you talking about? Like all the acronyms that are in healthcare. And so I kind of was like things that had been historically taking them longer. I was I was ramping out because I've been doing it, and I was very quickly pulled in more for upfront sales conversations and client calls because I had that like kind of domain knowledge that, so in addition to teaching over here, I was teaching over there, and like, there was a bit of like healthcare 101 that needed to happen for some people that had been in that first acquisition, which had happened like about 6 months before I had arrived.
Got it. And so as you have continued, so that you've grown this discipline at Impulse, you've brought this team along. What are the current challenges that you sort of feel like? Where do you feel like the most tension in your current work?
Yeah, so I'd say, well, I'm getting to a point where healthcare is feeling a little exhausting. Just like the regulatory aspects, the compliance. There are so many things that you want to innovate on, but like, is it going to take them 2 years to approve this? And like, am I going to even be around to like see it? Like, what's the deal? So I feel like, healthcare itself, it's great. We're now texting. But then sometimes there's like customers that want like 8 forms of authentication before they tell someone that they're due for a breast cancer screening. And it's like, that's just like, because that's not PHI. That's just like, she's a woman in her 50s. She's eligible. Like, why are we, so there's just still those hurdles that I'm a little tired of. And then more recently I there's been shifts and things, and so I think it's still it's never, the fight to show the worth of behavioral science is never over, which is an unfortunate truth. And so I think, with some of the shifts like we talked about, it's like, how do we still, here we are again, kind of like fighting the good fight to show that this thing matters. So I feel like, that's a space I'm in now. It's like, let's still be doing the tests and experimenting and things like that.
Yeah. What is the hardest? I mean, if you could, you rub Matt's fuzzy bald head, you get your wish. What is the legislation that you think would make it? Is it loosening up the rules around PHI and recognizing that like authentication is maybe a little bit different than regulators are thinking about? I mean, certainly it can be, if you don't, in the real world, we would sort of say, okay, well, if this phone number belongs to this person, I can text this phone number and presume that it's this person, and I could have a conversation with, like, before I text Eden, I don't be like, is this Eden?
Right? Yes or no. Yes or no.
Right. I don't like reaffirm your identity every time I have a conversation with you.
That is totally what I do when I text my friends.
Just checking you're still you. Is it the stuff around communication? Is it the stuff around health records? Like, where do you feel like the most friction today?
Yeah, so I'd say it could be where I'm sitting. But I would love, and there's always talks of it, but like, how do we share data a little better? And so that we can truly run like and learn on things. I think, there's a lot of like, you can only have an extent of our data, but then maybe you're not actually telling me what it did. Like, did it, like, I have a lot of that piece of like, then we don't maybe get access to claims data. And so it's really hard for me, like, even though I've applied this maybe in another case in an A/B test and I saw success, when we ran it really at scale, what happened? And I think some of that, if I was sitting directly at a plan, I would have the data. But like the magic, I feel like if especially if it was desensitized data, you're not actually getting anyone's name, phone numbers, address, things like that, but just demographics, population type, whatever. They're just their answers. But the power of like being able, like, across plans to see some of that and analyze it, I think that's like where magic happens and where a lot of things would pop up and you'd be able to, make solutions over a lot of barriers.
Yeah, I hear that. We talk often about the sort of business model, behavioral model, operational model sort of version of businesses. And sometimes things get over in the operational model and you're like, where is this thing, right? Like, I made it, right? We knew it worked in the small. Now you're supposed to be scaling it, and you sort of like lose track of like, did it work? Did it not work? Are they even monitoring whether it worked, or are they just sort of doing it blindly, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
particularly at Impulse, where you're working on behalf of plans, where the plan is sort of doing that last mile stuff,
Yeah.
it can be. So, do you think that you could see a world where you might end up in a plan or someplace where you might close that loop better, right? Like Impulse, goes out of business tomorrow. Like
Mhm.
where should I look for Eden Brunel?
Yeah, I'm at an interesting place where I'm trying to determine, like, I think going to a health plan would be really interesting because it would, like, I've been working on the vendor side for so long. So being able to actually work at a plan, work on the same type of solutions in-house, have access to data. And actually, one other piece that is hard being a vendor is that qualitative piece. So like I want to go out and, you know, listen to people and ask the questions of them because a lot of what I have to do is, just comb the literature versus actually getting to talk to, the diabetic population and, what are their hurdles to XYZ. So I think that would be interesting. So I'm really between that or do I just I think eventually part of me would be so interested in just applying behavioral science across industries, but I don't think I'm ready to I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to get out of healthcare yet.
Ooh, there's a good one. So if we close the door to healthcare, is there an industry that you're like, is it adjacent like insurance or sports medicine or something like that? Or are you like way off and you're going to Walmart and you're like off in a different consumer direction? Like, is there something that, where's
Mm.
next, right? If not
Yeah.
healthcare.
I mean, and like I love I don't know. I think it's the data part and the ability to run the tests and stuff. And so I don't know. I look at like Spotify or,
Mhm.
Netflix and it's not necessarily because I'm like, oh, I really want consumers to sit around and watch TV more or, I love the power of music, so I think I could get on board with that. Um, but it's just the things I think I'd pick up and learn about human behavior and be able to experiment on at scale so quickly that would excite me.
Yeah, the cycle times in healthcare can be quite long, right?
So
Um, like so long.
I'm
Once
like, I
again,
started something when I got here and I'm still like just putting it out there now, 2 years later. Like, it's
yeah.
wild.
Yeah, both from an approvals process and also just the like data closing the loop. And
Yeah.
you only get mammograms so often, right? It's not like you're getting a mammogram 20 times a day, right?
Yeah.
Spotify has this
Yeah.
constant feed of billions of data points where healthcare, often, you're numbered in the thousands. Um, I can totally hear that. Well, Eden, thanks very much for spending time with me today. I'm always super excited when we get a chance to chat, and I know you and I have some one-on-one time soon, I think, and we're going to get to
Yes.
chat some more, which I'm excited about. I think I love the way you sort of told the story of coming um, through those various cycles and coming through those things, and especially since you have I think there's a lot of behavioral science folks who end up hopping around a little bit. You've had longer tenures at places. You've had a chance to sort of build things, build legacy, create teams and people and bring them through that process. And me as someone who loves pushing the field of applied behavioral science. That teaching part internal to a company is so key, right? I know Mark Lush is on the call, who's at Ally. He and I talk about this all the time, and sort of how do you upskill a whole population of people, even if they're not going to be on the behavioral science team in air quotes, but so that they have you
Yeah.
talked earlier about shared language and the ability to sort of to bring things through the process. And I really love that, like uh
Yeah.
when
We
when
actually, yeah, we one good thing that we came up with was actually a boost workshop that we did to sales and accounts. And we made it really fun and like sort of like let's look at Amazon, let's look at Netflix, like let's do sort of like a put on your behavior, like we made cards, like we did it all. And it's so great now. We made it like we were thinking information overload. I co-did it with someone who's an instructional strategist, but it's so amazing to hear my salespeople like drop like, well, this is using endowment effect or loss aversion, and we studied it and this, and I'm like, oh, this like it just it's nice when those moments happen.
Yeah, I totally hear that when there's that moment of like, hey, you know, uh, someone has taken something I've said to heart and they're putting it into practice. They're not just saying it, but they're doing it, right? They understand, the conversation and the importance of creating those little mini moments. Well, so we did eventually get recording talk, so we'll put out
Yes.
the recording of this now once we eventually got it going. We'll have to redo another one. You have to come teach him anything. I always love it when you show up in my feed, and I hope that to see even more content from you sharing some of the tremendous work that you've done. I know that you're at heart a very humble person, and so it's hard for you sometimes to share some of that stuff. But you're doing so much internally. I'd love to see some of that in the external world, and maybe this will be the start, right? You do
Yeah.
this interview,
Keep
and
in
this is
touch.
right. This is where we're gonna get you out into the spotlight. Well, Eden, thanks so
Yeah.
much for spending time with me, and I look forward to talking soon. Thanks
All right.
everybody for
Thank you
coming.
all.
As always, like we'll get this up on the YouTube and other kinds of things soon. Thanks again to Miss Eden, and we'll see you all on down the road. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye.